Tess uncovers secrets of the mind in her talk, Blood Clots, Turbulence, and White Water Rafting, the Psychology of Fear. Please welcome Tess Parker.
Jinja, Uganda, commonly referred to as the adrenaline capital of Eastern Africa, Jinja is located at the source of the longest river in the world, the Nile. On my second day in Jinja, against my better judgment, I decided it wasn't enough to just watch the rapids of the Nile crash violently from afar. No, I needed to be in on the action. So after a morning of instruction and practice on calm water, in the same way you might snug up a toddler's bike helmet, our guide pulled on the straps of my life jacket, held out his knuckles for a fist bump, and said, "Tess, are you ready to raft the Nile?" Before I could respond, our raft was picking up speed and heading towards the first set of rapids. I quickly mumbled the first 3 rules of the day to myself. 1, listen to the guide. 2, hold on to your paddle. 3, don't panic. As we entered the first rapid, you can rest assured that I did absolutely none of those things. I looked downstream, panicked, and at the height of my fear, threw my paddle into what I believed to be the direction of open water. Y'all, it was not open water. I threw my paddle directly into my friend Annie's face, and that's when I learned the 4th rule of the day. You can't raft the Nile with a concussion. Although I've only rafted the Nile once in my lifetime, the emotion of fear is something I've experienced time and time again. Fear is a negative, short-lasting emotion we experience in response to a perceived threat. Everyone has a fear of something or someone. Now, we can choose to dismiss and avoid our fears, or we can befriend them as a teacher, and we can grow from their lessons. Here are the 3 lessons that I've learned. My first lesson comes from rafting the Nile. Lesson 1, fear can be mitigated, but not all fear can be avoided. We can spend hours, y'all, planning, rehearsing, or practicing for something like I did to raft the Nile River. And sometimes, regardless of that practice, our fears still get the best of us. Those moments are not failures. In the words of the epic philosopher Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Lesson 2, fear can be a wake-up call, a reminder to us of what is truly important in life. As I squeezed my dad's hand through the rails of his hospital bed in the ICU, I was overcome by a relentless and crippling fear of losing my dad, my closest friend, my greatest encourager, and the human being who raised me. Just 10 years ago, you see, my dad's life was forever changed when, without warning, the blood inside his body formed several clots, which broke free and traveled into his lungs. My dad's life changed in the blink of an eye as he went from traveling the world, teaching, doing yoga, to weeks after weeks spent in the hospital. Although fear was a very unwanted house guest at the time, its presence taught me the gift another human being can be in our lives, how sacred time together can be. It was that fear that made me grip my dad's hand a little bit tighter, listen a little bit more closely to his stories, and love everyone in my life a little bit more intentionally. Lesson 3, fear and action can exist simultaneously. Y'all, it took me 9,862 days of being alive, 17 international flights, and dozens of domestic flights before my body and brain had this realization of, you know what? We are actually unbelievably terrified of turbulence in airplanes. You see, I was flying from Denver to Cancun when I had this realization, and nothing, unfortunately, the passenger sitting behind me, in front of me, beside me, could calm my nerves. They also got to experience my fear as I began sweating and sobbing uncontrollably. Nothing and no one could calm my fears that day. And although I wished my fear of flying in turbulence was some kind of fluke, y'all, it's alive and thriving today, as my work colleagues likely draw straws to decide who gets to sit next to me on our work travel. Sorry, Travis. For the last 6 years, I've chosen to meet my fear of flying with action instead of avoidance. Choosing action has allowed me to visit my family who lives out of state, travel for a job I love, and be here with all of you today. Everyone has a fear of something or someone. Standing here today, I am a person with a complicated relationship to fear. Perhaps like some or many of you. Fear has been both profoundly difficult to navigate at times and a profound teacher. Its lessons have changed me, and I hope some of the lessons have resonated with some of you here today. Lesson 1, fear can be mitigated, but not all fear can be avoided. Lesson 2, fear can be a wake-up call, a reminder of what is truly important in our lives. And lesson 3, fear and action can exist simultaneously. So where am I left after untangling myself from fear's many lessons? Is there any way to put a bow on these experiences in my life or to find some kind of healthy resolution? To be honest, I'm not sure. I think I'm very much still figuring it out. But here's what I do know. I finished rafting the Nile River that day, and yes, Annie did eventually speak to me again, for those of you who are wondering. My dad is alive today. He's my biggest fan and my biggest role model. And on Thursday, I will get on an airplane to fly home with fear as a passenger. Thank you.
Tess Parker.